All right. Thanks for tuning in to All Things Division Three Soccer with Simple Coach and Jackie. That there is Jackie, and I'm Simple Coach. She's watching my six again. Really excited for today. Finally got around to taking a look at something that's been making me wonder. And so there's two parts to it. This part on corner kicks is just a quick look at some teams and goals scored and whatnot. And then there's the other part, which is free kicks. And a big reason for doing this is because everyone I talk to, all coaches I talk to talk about the importance of set plays, right? So to me, in my mind, set plays are three things: corners, fouls, free kicks outside of the box, and throw-ins. So I'm looking at the corners for this one, and I think you're going to find it interesting. And so let's do this. Okay, so I'm calling this corners to goals, and what I'm looking at in particular is just how many corner kicks do teams take in a given year, how many goals they score off of those. So just as there's 50 million caveats to this, obviously. So as I mentioned, I started to get intrigued about this because of the amount of coaches who talk about the importance of set plays. And so I look at set plays, like I said, corners, free kicks outside of the box, and throw-ins. And so for this round, I'm looking at corners. However, I did look at free kicks as well. I captured those, and so I'll be doing another show on specifically free kicks outside of the box. That's a little trickier, right? Because a free kick could happen, just outside of your defensive, 2 yards off of the back line on your defensive third. So those numbers tend to be a little bit inflated, but they're pretty revealing from what I've been able to tell. So, and of course, like I'd mentioned before, I'm questioning every part of the game that I can, just to, am I doing the right type of analysis, right? Am I looking at the game the right way? And I've been doing this, I started playing when I was 8 years old, so I've just made assumptions based on who speak, and so I just decided, this is not it. For whatever reason, I decided this is what I'm going to do. And so I decided, I'm going to focus in on corners on this one, probably because I think corners are, at least I think, the surest way to make something dangerous happen. Surest way. There's no doubt about where those balls are coming from, right? And they're attacking third. You can lump it in the box, get it in front of goal, something can happen. Other, free kicks, like I said, you could be, 60 yards away from the goal. And then throw-ins, you need a special set of circumstances. You need to be right on the right spot on the field, and you also need to have somebody who could deliver the ball at distance, right? It's not even from the sideline. If you're at the 18, it's a good throw into the center of the box. And so I decided for this one, probably the next show that I do, I'm going to focus in on free kicks and throw-ins, because it's interesting on the throw-ins. I have some thoughts. I will say that Amherst has a player who is by far the best flip throw taker that I've ever seen, ever. And can launch a ball with precision and pace like nobody else. And so yeah, so I want to take a look at that because is it dangerous or not? Now, understand, I get there's tactical aspects to having corner kicks, right? It drops the other team deeper into the box. You know, even when they clear the ball, the likelihood that they're going to recover that ball is not as great. So dumping it in the box makes a lot of sense at times, right? And taking crosses. The other thing I'll say is probably the most important thing to me on an executed corner kick that goes into the box is the delivery and the consistency of delivery. And I wonder about that sometimes, like because they seem, again, these could be set plays. I could be right, who knows? But the service tends to be erratic in my book, from what I can tell. Like I said, based on my video watching. But ultimately, what I wanted to do was, do they equate to goals? Do corner kicks that you take in a season, do they equate to goals? And so that's the gist of this show. So for those of you who have watched, I did a whole analysis on where I looked at 100 goals in Division III soccer, where they came from. And I'd always been intrigued by sort of how this was all dispersed, but I was in particular looking at, that's the Where Do Goals Come From show that I did probably December. I can't even remember. But you should check it out. I'll post a link somewhere up here. But what I was really interested in doing was taking a look at those balls that came into the box on corners and resulted in goals or didn't result in goals. And like I said, I make no assumptions. But based on this original Where Do Goals Come From, right, I learned that give or take 10%, so 10 or 11 out of 100 goals were from corner kicks. So, which holds to the maxim that I'd grown up with. Right? Everyone told me, you know, you want to score a goal, take 10 shots. Right? And that was sort of the average you were going. You shot because you wanted to get to 10 because the likelihood got greater and greater that you were going to score goals. So, yeah. So, and actually, this is 11. One of those led to a penalty kick. So, right, a little bit different context. Not necessarily thinking of that, but 10. What I was thinking was, okay, so 10% of goals should, if this holds true, and this should come from corner kicks. So let's take a look. Okay, so again, small sample. This is not easy because video is, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It's hard to track, and the time to watch videos is hard. So I, worked on websites. I took a look at statistics for the year, and I looked at 5 teams. So team number 1 had 136 goals in a season. Team number 2 with 101. Team number 3 had 130. Team number 4, 133. And team number 5 had 109. So again, I just sort of look across those 5. Those are the amount of corners that they have taken in this past season. So 136 for team number 1, 136 goals in their entire season. So put it at an average of about 119 corners in a year that a given team's gonna have. Now I will say, right, I wanted to see if there were differences. So the first 3 that you could see, so the 136, 101, 109, blue, orange, black, they're top 25 teams that I kind of randomly selected. The other two, so the green and gray, 133 crosses and the 130 cross teams, they were top 100 teams that I just sort of looked. I try to focus in on teams that I haven't had an opportunity to look at, and so to mix it up and yeah. So that was the sample. Those five teams. Again, it's not. This is not real statistics. This is not. I'm sure there's, if any statistician or quant guy is watching, they're probably just shaking their heads like amateur, But it is what it is. So, all right. So this is sort of laid out the way that graphic was, and so I made some assumptions. I talked to a couple people just asking, like, hey, give or take, how many goals, how many crosses do you think you have, and how many of those crosses, how many goals do you think a team scores? And the consensus seemed to be at the, I'll just say the relatively bottom end, because you could go to zero, right? But on average, 10% of crosses go in for goals. At the really good teams that practice this stuff and have set plays and all that stuff, 20% of their crosses they score. So if they do, as the example, team 2 with 101 crosses for the season, they should have 10 goals on the bottom end, right? Which, yeah, I do the math, and that's a little high, but whatever. So that equates to, given, if you think of season, 16 games, you're right, you do your own math, it's about 6 to 8 crosses per game, excuse me. And then if they're really good at corners, so they're that 20%, basically, these are assumptions, 20%, 1 to 2 goals a game they would score on corner kicks. I thought that was exceedingly high, right? That just, to me, seemed really, really high. So I'm in my own head, before I even started to scratch through the surface, I thought it was more like, you know what, 6 to 8 corners a game, you're going to get a goal every other game. That to me made a lot more sense than the 1 to 2, because if there were 1 to 2 per game, somebody would know about that. Somebody would be talking about that. So, okay, so this is at the same time, because I never do one thing easily, I got to complicate it. I decided, let me take a look at the opposition real quick. So I'm going to touch on the opposition. So what did the opposition do? As you can see, again, there are the bars with the total number of crosses in their season. Team 1 conceded 79 corner kicks. Team 2, 74. Team 3, 64. Team 4, 55. And then Team 5, well, they just took their ball and went home. They don't have stats on the opposition. And I really wasn't about to go game for game and try to track down what that looked like. So I let them go with their ball and try to, bring in some color as I based on the information that I have. So, okay, so based on that, Team 1 that conceded 79 corners only conceded 2 goals based on corners. That's about 2.5% of those corners went into goal. So team 2 let in 3. Just based on the numbers, they're a little bit higher at 4%. Team 3 didn't concede any. Team 4 didn't concede any. And I know Team 5 conceded 1, because I actually literally read that, corner kick, they scored. There could have been more. I just don't know. And so I looked at it. I sort of did some jumbled math, and I said, okay, the average is about 1.5 goals that you would score on an average of 69 corners in a season. So then I looked at the opposition's total goals scored. I looked at the team and how many goals were scored against them in a season. So that's what you see in the yellow ovals. So Team 1 conceded 20 goals in the season. So if they scored 20 goals and conceded two of those goals were corner kicks, 10% of the goals that they got scored against were corner kicks. Right? Simple math. And that's the percentage underneath the number. You could see it like right there. Okay, much higher, again, just numbers. And the 3 goals, they conceded only 10 goals this season, which, I mean, that's remarkable. But 3 of those were corners, so that's roughly 30% of the goals they conceded were from corner kicks. Team 3, like I said, didn't score any, but they conceded 19. Team 4 didn't concede any. They allowed for 18 goals, and then Team 5 they conceded 29 goals this season, and so that's about 3.4%, as you can see. So, right. So if we just take that 10%. These teams all did really well defensively on corners because they didn't concede 10% of the goals that they conceded were not corner kicks, right? Just extrapolating. So, okay, so this is where I think it starts to get interesting because I'm surprised, quite frankly. I really am surprised. I expected a lot more. I'll just say I thought there'd be a lot more, but This is now the goals that each of these teams scored. So Team 1 scored 7 goals off of corner kicks. Team 2 scored 4. So of the, in Team 1's case, it's about 5% of their total opportunities on corners. That's 4% for Team 2. Team 3 scored 1, so that's less than 1% of the amount based on 1 goal and 109 basically opportunities. Team 4 scored 2, so that's 1.5%, and Team 5 scored 2, and that's also comes out to about 1.5%. I think in relative terms, based on the number of opportunities, I was expecting higher. Right, a number of crosses, I was expecting higher numbers. So, again, I just looked at, okay, then I get it, you got to figure, you can't score in Team 1's case if you have 130 goals and you're trying to score 130, let's say 130 goals, or Team 5, 130 goals, you're expecting 13% or 10%, that would be 13 goals. That's seems a lot, right? Again, just intuitively seems a lot. But I looked at how many goals they scored in a season. So Team 1 scored 42 goals, which the corners that they scored off 7 goals off of corners represents about 14%, or 17% of their total output. Team 2 scored 4. They scored a total of 39 goals for the season, so that's roughly 10%, right? So that plays on the one side. Team 3 scored 30 goals in the season. They only scored 1 off of a corner, and that represents 3% of their output were from corners. Team 4 scored 2. They scored 29 goals in the season, so that's about 7%. That's better, right? That's higher. That's closer to that 10% threshold that seemingly seemed to be what that number should. Intuitively, what I think it should be. Team 5 scored 2 off of corners. They scored 38 goals in their season. That represents about 5%. So, like I said, that's not bad, right? Like, I think the part that I'm struggling with is, right, that the amount of opportunities that a team has in a season for corners, and again, sort of the opportunities they have 6 to 8 a game, and how effective are they at scoring goals, right? And so I've come to the conclusion, and I get it. Like maybe corners, or the way they're being played now, or what have you, are just not effective goal scoring opportunities. Right? Like maybe there's a better way to execute on corners where you increase the chances of scoring. Um, and just based on the numbers of amount of corner kicks that a team has in the season, I totally think that it's a real untapped potential for finding goals, right? To me, a lot of this exercise and a lot of the work I do for different coaches is about trying to hone in on areas where you can improve enough to score 3, 4 more goals, and what does that, and the difference that would make in a season, right? So I'm almost clearly team one with the 7 goals off of corners, 17% of their output. I mean, that's magisterial, to quote someone we all know and love. But I wonder if there's not a case on corner kicks where a little bit of, right, the blind squirrel finding the acorn. And I just wonder if it's not, again, untapped potential, but I just wonder if there's not a way to make them more dangerous, right? Like you're going to have 109. What if you're at 5%, and you scored 2 goals out of 100, and you're able to now score 7 goals out of 100. What's the difference in a season for that, right? Think of the tie games and whatnot, right? Again, just food for thought. And let me again, I know there's, this is all theory, right? It's all goes out the window when the ball starts rolling. But I get, to improve on these, you need a lot of practice time, and logistically it's kind of hard, right? Carrying a roster of 30, maybe 12 guys are participating on corners and everybody else is just sort of hanging around, right? I get all that. I understand that. And I'm not saying like that's okay, you should stop. And I just wonder, again, is there something that can't be done to creatively work on corners in such a way just to make their deadliness greater, right? So that a team will literally have to train to keep you from getting corners, right? That's a good problem to have, right? That's so. And then also I get, right, there is and I mentioned it earlier, very tactical purpose to there's a tactical purpose for corner kicks, right? I get that it's going to force the other team to drop back and defend. Even if they clear it, they're not going to necessarily win it. And then you could, again, the pressure concept, right? Where just get them all forward, back them up, and even when they try to get out, they're not going to have the space or the room to run. I get that. Again, looking at this from a different angle. Okay, so yeah, that's what I saw. And like I said, I get it's not a huge sample, and I will start digging a little bit more. And I think it's one of the things I'm going to be mindful of going forward is just on corner kicks. And I'd be curious to know, and if you're willing, comment down below or shoot me an email. Would love to just talk about how teams go about practicing for on both ends of the ball, and how many teams actually have you know options on corner kicks, right? Like I know everyone has the short one that's ultimately looking to go back across, right? Draw out a defender, you whip it across, all that stuff. I get that. I just wonder if there's not more, right? I think right there's as many options as you can draw on a piece of paper. So anyhow, okay, thank you for joining. Really do appreciate it and hope to see you again soon. Say bye, Jackie.